welcome to this episode of Rebels Reaction, the show where we recap and react to the latest Star Wars Rebels episode. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Christine.
On this episode, we react to Iron Squadron. Christine, your one-word reaction.
Family.
Family. Interesting. I had growing on multiple levels. Multiple layers.
Multiple layers.
Layers. All right. Let's go.
You know of the rebellion against the Empire?
Perhaps you referred to the imminent attack on your rebel fleet.
Where is the rebel base?
I didn't know there was anyone willing to stand up against the Empire.
All right, so we are reacting to Iron Squadron. Let's jump into the big three. Number one, I had new rebels.
People?
People.
Oh.
Characters.
Yeah.
Combatants.
Combatants.
All of the above. So we are quickly introduced as the Ghost Crew jumps into the My Capo system.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, I think
It's hard to pronounce.
it is. Words that I'm not familiar with.
Because they're not in English.
Yeah. The mission is to evacuate as many rebel sympathizers from the system as possible. The Ghost Crew quickly finds a YT freighter.
Not our favorite one, though.
Not our favorite. It's
pretty awesome,
after we
though.
get to know it. I like it, but it is not the Millennium Falcon. It is a YT 2400,
Oh.
crewed by individuals calling themselves the Iron Squadron.
Dun, dun, dun.
That wasn't ominous.
Your voice was ominous.
I was supposed to be like, cool.
Oh.
Maybe I need to work on my narrator voice. We'll work on that. So the crew, dubbed the Iron Squadron by themselves, consists of individuals whom Zeb quickly refers to as a crew full of Ezras.
Yep.
Which was one of the best lines of the episode, I thought, and one that was fairly accurate.
Yeah, fairly true.
So we meet Guti Terez, Donner, Johnner, Jin, a lot of alliteration there,
Yep.
and Martin, not Martin, named for someone named Martin, but Mart Matin, who happens to be the nephew of Commander Sato,
Yep.
and who Commander Sato thought was not alive anymore.
Yeah.
But we kind of get some of that interplay, and I think that's where your family
Hey, look
word
at that.
may come in. Foreshadowing, perhaps. So this crew of teenagers, much like Ezra, are battling what little remnant, or not necessarily a remnant, but maybe forerunners of the Empire are there. And they think they're hot stuff because they're shooting down TIE fighters and destroying transport ships.
Yep.
But are disillusioned as to their actual effect on the Empire, which the Ghost Crew tries to convince them of. To little avail, at least at first. But throughout the episode, they're convinced.
They figure it out.
Yes, as bigger and bigger ships start jumping into the system. So the Ghost Crew tries to get them out of there. Their ship is in such disrepair. The hyperdrive doesn't work. All the power's routed to the shields and lasers. Really, they are trying to protect their home with everything they've got, and they seem to be the only ones really trying to do that.
Yeah, that's true. There's no one else around who's fighting.
Yeah. So there's some interplay there between the Ghost Crew trying to convince them, like, hey, it would be a really good idea to leave.
Yeah.
And the Iron Squadron crew saying, no, this is our home. We've beat everyone that have come, any Imperial threat that's come up thus far.
Yeah.
We can take them out.
Yeah.
And the more experienced crew is saying, hey, not a good idea.
Yeah. It's going to get worse and worse.
And the real issues start to come up when we see, and number 2 on my list, Thrawn playing his game.
Oh, yeah.
So
Always got the long game.
yes. So Thrawn once again does not take an active role per se in this situation that the Ghost crew find themselves in. Instead, sends Admiral Constantine to alleviate the system of the rebel threat. And Constantine is taken aback at first, saying, "You want me to actually go?
By myself?
Yeah, you don't want me to sit on this big fancy Star Destroyer and be protected?" So it's interesting to kind of see Constantine's disposition in that area of, are you sure?
Cowardice?
Yes, mostly. And that gets me thinking, how did he get to be an admiral?
Yeah, how did he make it that far?
So he must have some connections that,
Some big shot uncle or something?
yeah, that got him there, or the expansion of the Empire and retooling after decommissioning the clones has allowed for people to slip through the cracks.
Possibly.
And so he reluctantly goes after Thrawn sort of challenges his manhood,
Yeah.
essentially, and sets a fairly good trap, which we'll get into in a bit.
Obvious.
Obvious, but
Good.
a fairly good one in the end, sort of. And then for number 3 of the big 3, I had letting go for bigger things.
That's well phrased.
Thanks.
Nice work.
Compliments. So Ezra uses his story to help the Iron Squadron crew let go of their homeworld and become a part of the larger cause. So throughout the episode, Ezra, as the Iron Squadron becomes more and more, it's more and more evident that they're being stubborn as far as not wanting to leave their homeworld. The Ghost crew tries to convince them, hey, there's bigger ships coming. You're not as hotshot as you think you are. Yeah, you're good and you're brave, probably really reckless too, but you can serve such a greater purpose beyond where we're at.
And you won't last that long here if you stay.
Yeah. So let's jump into a little bit of an explanation of our reactions. You mentioned family, and we kind of talked a little bit about it.
So it's a pretty broad word, but in this case, just going back to how Star Wars is really good at pointing out and presenting complex family relationships, and there's always a lot going on within the families, and a difference in how they define family. Like we have the Ghost crew as a family, Mart, Johnner, and Guti.
Yeah.
Guti.
Yeah.
Are family. They've become a family as they're part of this crew, and then also the bloodlines of Sato and his nephew, and that relationship specifically is really complicated and interesting because Sato obviously loves his nephew. His nephew has completely ignored him, not even given any indication that he's alive, even though Sato has continually tried to transmit to him. But the nephew, Mart, is he's creative. He's finding his own ways to accomplish what he wants to make happen. He's brave. He's reckless. He's independent. Sato says he's rebellious.
Yeah, which is something that kind of has continued to come up in multiple areas of Star Wars, and it's kind of fun to see.
Yeah. And he basically has let go of his bloodline family in favor of his crew family. But then Sato, who's pretty important, I mean, he's a commander, puts himself in danger for the sake of this nephew who has rejected him, but he still is coming for him. And the nephew's surprised by that. He was surprised that his uncle actually came for him after he had rejected his uncle in the first place. And that's just the reality of how strong family bonds are and different types of family bonds.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely a common theme that has come up as not only this season, but it'll be interesting to see how that theme comes up in Rogue One. Because I think it's going to be a similar situation where those blood ties maybe aren't as strong, but the community team ties are much stronger.
And then what do you do when those are contradictory to each other?
Yeah. So, and that's a little bit even what we see in the saga films with the Skywalkers and this pull towards different directions. And I mean, in Bloodline, we see the repercussions of that blood tie with Leia, and it's that family piece is a huge theme within Star Wars, and it's defined in so many different ways, and it's fun to see it continue to come up in new characters that we're not familiar with.
Yeah.
But in similar ways that we are familiar with.
Yeah.
My word was growing, and kind of different levels on that as far as the rebellion itself is growing.
Yeah. Adding
We've
people.
seen several episodes with new individuals coming into the fold as far as the rebellion, and I think it's speaking to a wider scope of the rebellion itself. These splinter cells that were once acting on themselves against the Empire are now starting to come together to more cohesively accomplish an end goal.
Yeah.
And we don't totally know what that end goal is yet, but it'll be interesting to see as we move forward in the storyline the different missions that come up, and really the end goal of trying to end the Empire as opposed to disrupt the Empire.
Yeah, that's true.
The other kind of level or avenue towards growing that I had was these life lessons. So throughout this season, we've seen the Ghost crew learn life lessons, from Ezra to Kanan to Hera to even a little bit of Sabine.
Yeah.
The one character that I'm a little disappointed we haven't gotten a whole lot of is Zeb.
Yeah, I was just thinking that he hasn't been that big in any of the episodes we've seen so far.
Which could be foreshadowing as far as he's kind of taking a step back as far as a main character. He's definitely still an important character because of who he is as a part of the crew, but an active role in what's going on, because it's very much been Ezra and Sabine have been really the focus, and then Hera and Kanan are a part of the focus as well. Or Zeb might not make it through the season.
Don't say that. That's horrible.
It is. But continuing to build emotional bonds, I don't know. Just a thought.
I don't like that thought.
I know. I'm sorry. But the life lessons, especially that Ezra is learning, he essentially passes some of them on in this episode to the Iron Squadron crew. He tells them his story of being afraid, and of course the Iron Squadron, the uppity teenagers they are, react as if we're not scared.
Yeah.
But Ezra clarifies himself in what feels like sage wisdom, even though it's a wise thought, but Ezra himself maybe isn't that wise.
Yeah.
That he wasn't afraid of the Empire themselves. He was afraid of losing his home, his what felt like familiar territory to him, to be a part of this bigger picture.
Yeah.
So as he does that, and it happens a little bit faster, I think, for the Iron Squadron crew, because they're not a focus of the storyline. They're a part of it. They quickly figure out that, yes, the Empire is this terrible thing that we can't fight on our own. We need to be a part of something bigger. And if that means leaving, which is a theme that came up in the episode itself as well, that we can then eventually come back and free our home from the grips of the Empire, that we can do that. And I think that was one of the things that went really well for the episode, and let's just jump into what we really liked about the episode as well, is that for the characters, particularly Mart, he was really surprised that the Ghost crew came back.
Yeah.
I think he's probably experienced in his life not only the loss of his father and probably more of his family, but people that have said they'd do things maybe didn't and didn't come back for him. So he seemed really surprised when the Ghost crew came back, and even when his uncle showed up to try to get him out of there.
Yeah.
That was...
It was a shock to him.
Yeah, it was a shock, but I think it was also a good example that, hey, you can leave and be a part of this bigger picture, and it's going to accomplish your end goal anyway, just maybe not in the way that you thought. And I think that's a pretty big life lesson in general of, we may be kind of white-knuckling things in life that we really want to control, and it's all up to us, but as we kind of step back and look at the bigger picture, there may be different avenues we have to take to get there.
That's a good point.
So a big takeaway, I think, from this episode, maybe not wholly overt in terms of what we were trying, what the
main point
the
of the
main
episode.
point of the episode, but I think it was definitely a very important piece of not only Ezra really being able to communicate his story and his understanding of that lesson, but then those that are trying to learn that same lesson, we actively see them kind of through at least part of that process.
Yeah.
And the importance of family and how that plays into that role as well. Another thing I really liked was, let me flip over my paper here so I can read. The wider galaxy. Well, I'll get to that because that can lead us down a rabbit hole. Thrawn sitting back.
Yes.
I think as we continue to see Thrawn and him develop as a Rebels character, as a canonical character, it's really thank you. Trying hard this episode. I think seeing his character, his overall attitude towards just the rebellion in general is really interesting to see, and how he is so much about the bigger picture. And I really, really can't wait to see him in full action, because he's in observation mode right now.
Yeah. I was just thinking that how something that at first I didn't like, but now that I think about it more, I really, really like, and I'm excited to see more, is how at the very end he just lets him go. And like he has Commander Sato right in front of him. He could just use tractor beam and pull him right in. But he just says, until next time, and then lets him go. Because there's so much more going on. He says, now I know what it takes to get you out in the open. So I'm really, really interested to see how he uses the information from this episode and the other episodes we've seen into some big, crazy, big old trap.
Yeah, and that'll be the really interesting thing as we look towards how that fits together with other things happening in the timeline. Because we're starting to butt up really close to Rogue One and A New Hope, and how those pieces really fit together. I think the growth of characters in general, kind of what I already talked about as far as Ezra and Hera and Kanan, Sabine to an extent, is really good to see. And I think the true indication of growth in character is being able to communicate that and encourage others in that same avenue. So we see that in this episode. I thought Sabine throwing down her Imperial knowledge, even though it kind of bugged me at first, but when I really thought about it, this trap that was sprung, the mine, being able to identify that really quickly.
She figured it out right away.
That I was like, that was really easy. But she took pieces of information and connected them to things that she knew from her time
she'd
in
been
the
in
academy,
Imperial.
and even some of the time that she spent in an earlier episode at a flight academy.
Yeah.
Taking those pieces of information to string it together to very quickly identify, they probably put a mine on your ship.
And Constantine's not that creative, so it probably wasn't a huge, awesome idea. It was probably pretty par for the course.
Yeah. And I think the bigger thing for me, or at least really interesting thing for me, was this picture of a wider galaxy and research, of the little bit of research that I did for talking about this episode. Apparently, this isn't the first time we've seen a YT 2400 freighter. In fact, possibly, and I couldn't really tell based on the source, it is the same YT freighter, dubbed Sato's Hammer, that we see in the 97 re-release of A New Hope, taking off from Mos Eisley spaceport.
Cool.
So it's interesting to see that perhaps at the same time Obi-Wan and Luke are looking for a ride off of Tatooine, that perhaps there's other Rebels cells that are active on Tatooine and taking part in what's going on. And I think it speaks to just a wider understanding of the storyline that it's, and it kind of brought up this question for me, and this isn't something we'd explore on this show, but maybe one of our others, that is Star Wars about the Skywalkers, or is it just the saga films that are about the Skywalkers?
Oh,
So as we have the Clone Wars, I mean, Anakin has a huge role to play in that.
Yeah.
With Rebels, not as much. Is the absolute focal point of the entire Star Wars galaxy the Skywalkers, or is it just a piece of the story that we've been introduced to most, the Skywalkers, and that there's this broader scope within the Star Wars universe?
That's interesting.
That they're a key role. They play a key role in, but it's Star Wars is not synonymous with
The
Skywalkers.
Uh-huh.
And I think that opens the door for a piece of these rebels, specifically force-wielding rebels, Kanan and Ezra and Ahsoka, if she's still alive.
I hope she's still alive.
Ahsoka lives. Those force wielders that are a part of the rebellion may be able to squeeze themselves into the storyline if it's done right, and it not feel like, why weren't they at the Battle of Yavin? Why weren't they at the Battle of Endor? What's going on as a part of the broader scope of the rebellion? Are there other places in the galaxy that they're accomplishing a mission at a different time that's just as important?
Oh, I really hope so. That would be great. It really makes me sad to think that these characters may not make it because we don't see them in the saga films.
And I think that's what we're trying to build towards.
I hope so.
So it's a really interesting thing to possibly discuss elsewhere. So we'll see where that conversation goes. But I thought that was really interesting that that if this same YT 2400 freighter is showing up in a saga film, is it just by happenstance or is it intentional? And how does that really fit together in the broader scope of the story?
Yeah. I really, really hope that that's correct.
Yeah. So there were a lot of, I felt like, deeper pieces of this episode that, whether they were intentional or not, that just kind of where my thought,
broad implications.
Yeah, broad implications across many different areas and reoccurring themes. So I had a hard time really trying to figure out something I didn't like about the episode. I didn't have chills like I did a couple episodes back with Thrawn and Hera's Heroes. I thought that was an exceptional episode, and we've really been spoiled for the most part this season.
Yeah.
But I thought this was a very strong episode, and the one thing that I thought could have been better was really the ineptness of the Imperials, particularly Constantine.
Yeah.
So, yes, he lays this trap, and I understand how the trap works and how he's trying to lure the rebels back based on information that he knows, almost kind of playing a similar game to Thrawn. Definitely not to the same scope or proficiency, but the same sort of trap nonetheless. And I know the droids mess with the mind, but still having trouble even when it should have been working.
Yeah.
I had a little bit of an issue with that, but again, really just a nitpick, and it serves its purpose throughout the episode, or towards the end of the episode anyway. But it's still an interesting piece of how I think we've seen the Imperials start to get it right, but there's still a certain level of ineptness that is going on that it makes it a little bit tough to really see. And even in the episode, the rebels have to escape. They leave, but then come back and are able to accomplish what they want to.
Yeah.
So anything you thought could have been better?
Another nitpicky thing, but the very, very end of the episode when they're all celebrating, the camera whatever pans back, and then the very last second or two, the animation gets pretty poor. So that was a little bit annoying. It's really small and really quick, but it got kind of poor at the end when I had him from far away just doing the same motions over and over again instead of having actual human type.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a little bit of a downer towards the end of an episode, especially with the level of overall.
Yeah, it's so well done in almost every way.
That, I get it, but maybe
I'll
give him a pass. Okay, anything else for this episode?
I don't know. I think just what you said about Constantine being pretty inept in a lot of ways. Not every way, but a lot of ways is a little bit frustrating, but also there could be more going on there. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Lots of pieces starting to fall together.
Yeah.
We've dumped out the puzzle box, and we're starting to click. We've maybe got the outline of our puzzle put together.
Let's see what Thrawn does with it.
Yes, very interesting. So that wraps up this episode of Rebels Reaction. Make sure to check us out on unmistakably-starwars.com. We've got articles going up throughout the week. Our flagship podcast should drop tomorrow, Thursday. I think we have a Star Wars on tap with Devin. We'll check in with just look on Twitter. He does a promo for it each week. Listen to the main podcast. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that so you get all of our great shows in your inbox anytime they show up. For this episode of Rebels Reaction, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Christine.
Until next time, may the Force be with you.